After over a year in development, Challenge Mode has finally hit its 1.0 release. A lot of you are probably familiar with the Challenge Mode mod for Tears of the Kingdom. Originally, it was a mod meant to bring Master Mode to Tears of the Kingdom, but it evolved into more of a straight-up difficulty mod with some Master Mode elements. But don't worry, almost every single element of this mod is optional, so you can pick and choose which parts you want to use. If you haven't heard much about this mod before, I'll provide a brief recap right now going over some of the features we already knew about prior to this 1.0 release, along with some new ones. So if you've seen my coverage of this mod before, or you're already familiar with Challenge Mode, stick around anyway because there's quite a few new things to go over. This mod makes a variety of optional gameplay changes, mostly nerfs, that will affect how you approach combat scenarios. Your attacks no longer stun enemies, your charge attacks take longer to charge and deal less damage, your flurry rushes only let you attack half as many times, you no longer have one-shot protection, the mechanic that would let you survive a fatal blow if you were at full hearts when you got hit, and sages are useless for combat. Then you also have things like Lynels taking less damage from mounted attacks, and probably the biggest nerf, you can no longer eat raw materials and you can no longer have stacks of cooked food, only one of each meal. And finally, you can choose to start your game on the new Game Plus mode, that automatically scales all of the scalable enemies to the new Golden tier, so you have a significant challenge for the entire game. There's a few other minor nerfs and changes, go ahead and pause now if you want to see all of them. Those are all of the optional features that you can pick and choose between. Now let's talk about some of the non-optional features, like how this mod adds back all the Lynel weapons from Breath of the Wild that didn't make it into Tears of the Kingdom, and an entire new tier of enemies, gold enemies, just like in Master Mode for Breath of the Wild. It also makes some changes to the monster camps that are part of the Monster Control Crew quests, which we'll go over in more detail soon, and it adds a harder version of each mini-boss in the game and a secret new group of enemies that I'll show towards the end of this video. First, let's go over the gold tier of enemies, recap the changes, and show off some new horn models. Bokoblins, Moblins, Lizalfos, Horriblins, Boss Bokoblins, and Lynels all have a new golden tier, while Soldier and Captain constructs have the new seized tier. In the new golden and seized tiers, enemies have more health, deal more damage, and move and attack faster, making them a significant challenge to fight. But it's worth the fight because each of these new enemies comes with a beautiful, custom-designed horn that you can fuse to your weapon that all add a ton of attack power. I'll give you a second to appreciate these high-quality icons for each of the new horns and see how much damage each one does. I recommend you pause here to really take in how great these all look. Next, let's go over the new Monster Control Crew camps and how each one is now a much more significant challenge. Each camp now has a wide variety of enemies, each at their highest tier, gold for monsters and seized for constructs. This means that alongside the normal enemies, you'll also be fighting an armored golden Lynel at most of these camps. The reward is worth it though, because you can get a brand new custom armor set inspired by the Zonai designs in Breath of the Wild, that when fully upgraded becomes one of the strongest armor sets in the game, with the highest defense and the abilities of all three elemental armor sets combined. Next, let's talk about the new mini-bosses added by the 1.0 release of Challenge Mode. If you do end up playing this for yourself, I recommend checking out the hint book in the Room of Awakening. It has some fun lore for each of the new mini-bosses. I'll go in order from easiest to hardest based on my personal experience with them. First, we have the Seized Flux construct, which has more health, deals more damage, moves faster, takes way less weak point damage from arrows, and most importantly, moves the weak point constantly. To me, this one was the easiest because Flux constructs are already stupid easy, so there's not much that can be done to make it harder. But the increased speed and the fast weak point movement does make it a little more tense and encourages you to pull the construct apart with Ultra Hand. Overall, this was way more fun to fight than any other Flux construct. Next up, we have the Deep Hinox that you'll find in the depths. This half-decomposed Hinox is probably my favorite design for the mini-bosses. It's nightmarish, but it's amazing. I love that you can see out of the back of its ribcage through its mouth. The Deep Hinox comes with the standard health, damage, and speed buffs, but also adds elemental immunity and decreased damage taken from arrows. After defeating the Deep Hinox, you're rewarded with this beautiful 68 damage ring pop horn that's actually modeled after the concept art for Hinox horns in the TOTK Masterworks book. Next up, we have the Moldu Queen, which has some cool lore behind it related to the Moldu King in Breath of the Wild, but I'll let you discover that for yourself with the hint book. The Moldu Queen also sports a stunning new design along with the standard slate of buffs. On top of this, the Moldu Queen boasts elemental immunity, and even if you get her to eat a bomb, she won't stay stunned on the surface for long, so you won't have much time to get your hits in. After defeating the Moldu Queen, you're rewarded with some 52 damage Moldu Queen fins. That's a whopping 40 damage higher than the regular Molduga fins. Now this is where things start to get more difficult with the brand new Mother Frox. The Mother Frox of course has the standard buffs, which already serve to make it more challenging when you get sucked into its maw at Mach 10. But it also cannot be dazed like a normal Frox, and when you break one of the ore deposits on its back, a bunch of teeny tiny little Frox babies pop out, and they freeze you when you're hit, leaving you vulnerable for the Mother Frox to have her way with you. It's awesome. After defeating the Mother Frox, you're rewarded with the 71 damage Mother Frox Fang. Then we have probably my favorite mini-boss mechanic-wise, the Diamond Battle Talus. This mighty diamond foe comes with the standard buffs along with having 3 golden bokoblins riding it, each of them shooting a different elemental arrow. And if that wasn't enough, the Diamond Battle Talus has 1 Frost Arm and 1 Igneo Arm, which is a devastating combo not only when it hits you, but also when it releases elemental keys on impact. Oh, and if you were thinking about ascending to the top of it, think again, because the Diamond Battle Talus will back up and swing at you with one of its elemental arms to keep you at a distance. This one was a lot of fun to fight. After defeating the Diamond Battle Talus, you're rewarded with the 65 damage Diamond Talus Heart. And last but not least, we have the Demon Lord Gleeok, the mini-boss that we've known about for a while. Since I've covered her before, I won't go into too much detail here, but it works much the same as it used to. The eyeballs are no longer weak to arrows, so the best strategy is to use high damage boomerangs or spears to throw into the eyeballs so you can attack it. Since I last covered it, the Demon Lord Gleeok has had its health and damage lowered, so it's not quite as hard as it used to be, but it's still a very significant challenge that should not be underestimated. But if you manage to beat it, you get a ton of rewards including the burning, freezing, and shocking demonic Gleeok horns that each deal 92 damage on top of their elemental effect, and you get the Harbinger of Chaos, an absolute unit of a weapon. It's a two-handed weapon that has 125 base damage along with a built-in shield so you can fuse whatever you want to it, and on top of all that, it's also a boomerang. Insane. Whew, that was a lot. But that's it for mini-bosses, so let's move on to the secret final group of enemies. That's right folks, there's another tier above gold now. I introduce to you the Tyrant tier of enemies. There is only one Tyrant version of each of the base monsters in the game, and that's because these are Ganondorf's lieutenants. They're essentially an even more beefed up version of their golden counterparts. They have even more health, deal even more damage, and move even faster. The speed of this Lizalfos left me quaking in my boots. The horns are an upgraded version of the golden horns. I'll show all of the Tyrant horns on screen right now, as well as how they compare to their golden counterparts damage-wise. Most of these Tyrants are just located in specific spots around the map, but to reach the Lynel Tyrant, you need to defeat the Lynel Colosseum, which now starts with a blue-maned Lynel, then goes to a white-maned Lynel, a silver Lynel, a gold Lynel, and finally the Lynel Tyrant. The Lynel Tyrant has 20,000 health, which is exactly 4 times more health than a silver Lynel. It deals significantly more damage, moves so much faster, and it can't even be killed by an ancient blade arrow. You wouldn't want to anyway though, because if you manage to defeat this tremendous specimen, you're rewarded with a blazing, frigid, and charged Lynel Tyrant horn. These are basically slightly weaker versions of the demonic Gleeok horns, granting you 88 fuse attack power instead of 92, but they still hit like a truck, give you elemental effects, and look absolutely incredible. You also get to claim the Lynel Tyrant's weapon, the Deathbringer, a two-handed longsword that deals 95 damage, has a built-in shield so you can fuse whatever you want to it, and on top of all that, it also has the Wind Razor ability, so when fused with one of the horns, you get some very high damage elemental Wind Razor blasts. I love it. While this is the full 1.0 release of Challenge Mode, development doesn't end here. Since 1.0 launched, there's already been 4 patches at the time of writing this, and they still plan to include enemy health regeneration like Breath of the Wild's Master Mode as another optional feature. If you're someone who loves difficulty mods, I highly recommend checking out Challenge Mode, and I also highly recommend that you subscribe to me. If you don't, I'll send the God of Lynels after you. Thanks for watching.